This is Cadillac Unscripted on 107.9 CDY. It is sponsored by Independent Bank. I am Rich Spicer flying solo this week as Katie is out of town on business. And you know that we love to talk about local theater. We feature them every possible chance we get. And it's almost time for our town. So we've got members of the cast here with us this morning. We have Julie Van Heitzma, who plays Julia Gibbs, Jacob Johnson, who plays George Gibbs, Annabelle Tharnish, who plays Emily Webb, and Heather Branham. And your part is? I didn't get to ask you that.
Mrs. Webb.
All right. So we've got the Webbs and the Gibbses here. So for those of us who are vaguely familiar or somewhat familiar with theater, Our Town is a familiar title. Tell us about what Our Town is, and whoever can start with that. They're all pointing at Julie Van Heitzma. So, Mrs. Gibbs, tell us about your town, and then we can get into what your role is.
Sure. Our Town is a play written by Thornton Wilder. It won the Pulitzer Prize many, many years ago. And it's basically a picture of small town life in the small town of Grover's Corners in New Hampshire in the United States. Fictional town, but it covers the lifespan of two families, the Webbs and the Gibbs. And so they have children. So Heather plays Mrs. Webb and I play Mrs. Gibbs. And Jacob is my son, George, and Annabelle is Heather's daughter, Emily.
So you each have your theatrical offspring here with you.
Yes, some of them. Yes, we also have other offspring. But,
Sure. How big is the cast?
So it's actually quite a large cast because there's a lot of extras in this show.
Okay.
So I would say 20 some.
Around
I think it's a pretty good sized group, which is, you think of Our Town and you don't necessarily think of it as being a large cast, but it has various people from the town, the constable, my husband's the doctor, but and people from the choir rehearsal, and so it's a decent sized cast, which is really nice because we've been able to bring in quite a few new people to the stage in this show.
And I want to cover that in just a second, but the first thing that I think of is how did the Footliters come to decide to do this particular play?
So when the play selection committee was meeting about this coming season, because it was our 60th season, there
was a little bit of pressure on because it was like a round number you wanted to do. Okay.
It's like we decided to kind of make a big deal out of it.
Okay.
And we wanted to include shows in this season that were traditional or historic or that had commonly done in community theater to kind of celebrate the fact that we are a community theater that's been around for 60 seasons. So Our Town is one of the first names of plays that you think of when you think of traditional straight play, non-musical plays that are done in American theater. And so it was a pretty easy pick for us and it also resonates really well, I think, with smaller town living, rural type living, like, quite often in the greater Cadillac community we have here. So we felt like it would play well in this community.
Is there anything, how long ago was this written? We're talking probably 50, 60 years, right?
It was like 1923.
So 100 years. So what in it, if anything, is dated? You would have to think that there might be some things in there that are very much of the time, right?
I mean, Jacob and Annabelle can talk about that a little bit, because I think where you notice it most is a little bit in the way that their relationship develops and how they court each other and fall in love, because it's not at all like nowadays. Very, very different, I think. And just the family relationships maybe, and the way the town is all connected with each other.
More closeness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your background in acting. Now, most times that we have talked to you in a directorial position. So if you were to take your experience, with the full pie, 100% being the full pie, how much of your experience is directing and how much is acting? And what do you like best?
Oh boy. Well, it's like, it's 97% directing.
Okay. So
I have not been on stage a ton. I was in Into the Woods about 7 years ago as the Wicked Stepmother. I always tease that I was typecast. And I was in Love, Loss, and What I Wore, which was a group sort of ensemble. But that's it.
Okay. So this is a higher profile role than you were used to.
It is, definitely. And I think because of that, I'm definitely more comfortable in the director's chair. I've just directed so many shows over the last 35 years or whatever that's pretty natural to me. So it's been good for me, I would say, because it's giving me a different perspective, from the actor's perspective. And I'm like, oh yeah, I paraphrase too. So, yeah.
And that probably makes you better as a director.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She is a phenomenal director. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just watched her hand her a 20. No, I'm joking.
Thanks,
She is a
Heather.
phenomenal actress too. I want that to be clear.
It's
But
radio.
she
We
is
don't have a
great
webcam here to prove
director.
this. So.
Nice save.
Yeah. Okay, so Jacob Johnson plays George Gibbs. Jacob, how many? I'm sure you have kept count, but how many productions is this for you for the Footlighters now?
All right, let me think.
Maybe you haven't kept count.
No, I haven't,
Okay.
actually. I was four.
Fourth one?
Yep, fourth one.
Okay. So tell me about your role and how you find your passion in theater.
So, I've really been, for finding my passion in theater, I've been mostly just, I enjoy watching movies. So I enjoy watching Jim Carrey, mostly. He's been my inspiration and, getting to know him more and, seeing his films and all that. And
So what Jim Carrey movie is the one for you?
okay.
Because he has a penchant for really overacting and chewing the scene.
Yes. So, okay, my all-time fave for Jim Carrey was the real-life action version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Okay.
Just the way he put his, oh my gosh, his
He threw everything into that role.
yes, his charisma, his just comedic comedy into it, and his facial expressions mostly, especially with all the makeup and everything. And he was just truly everything to me growing up.
And so so he's a comedian, or mostly a comedian, although he's had some serious roles.
Yes.
So how does Jim Carrey inform your performances? I just threw you a curveball.
You do.
Because it sounds to me like this is not a Jim Carrey-like role
No,
at
it's
all.
not. So yeah, mostly the performance I've done with Footlighters have been laughter and out there more. And this one, it's like first drama, I would say, for me.
Okay.
And just getting into my feelings and talking to her, talking to Emily, especially in one scene where I let all my feelings out, and I'm calm with her, and I'm just this is how I feel.
So this is a stretch for you.
It is.
Okay.
And
it's good to stretch.
yeah, it is. Going into this, I was oh man, this is totally new for me. And I was kind of nervous at it because I didn't think I was going to make the part or do the best I can. But then as I was doing it, everyone was just saying oh my gosh, this is so good. And I'm wow, thank you. And it's...
So you found out that you were better than you thought you were.
Yeah, that's
a confidence
I do that
booster.
all the time too. Yeah, I do that all the time where I just maybe I'm not right for this role, but then as I'm getting it, I'm you know what? Maybe I am. Confidence is the key for me.
What was your first role?
My first role with Footliters?
Did you do theater in high school?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And where at?
Pine River High School.
Okay.
And for Footlighters, my first role was Lucas Beinke in The Addams Family. That was a big role for me, especially starting with them. And when I got the call, I was oh my gosh, that's crazy. it was crazy. And then just like going to first practice and meeting everybody and I kind of felt like the oddball out for sure. And I was just kind of like,
oh well,
gosh.
that's natural.
Yeah,
your
it is
first
natural.
time.
Yeah. And just standing next to everybody and like, oh man, oh gosh. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do and everything. But as soon as it came to the end of that, I was like, wow, I actually did a great job. And, so.
Heather Branham plays. So we'll move to the webs now. Heather, what is your role, and tell me about your history with live theater.
All right. So my role is Mrs. Webb. I am Emily's mother in the play. I have been involved in Footliters for about 13 years because my real life daughter, Emily, started joining it when she was 7. So
she went first.
She went first.
Okay.
Oh, for sure. It's her dream. So I'm kind of on the back tails of it. But I discovered that if I wanted to enjoy it with her, I would be involved. So I started with helping with costumes and volunteering. And then it turned into backstage manager, turned into joining the board. And this year was my first year as an assistant director. So I've been involved in every aspect of it. I've only been on stage, I say only, 8 times really over this course of probably about 10 years for me acting. And so this is my first main role as well. So I enjoy all the different aspects of it. I enjoy being stage manager. I enjoy helping with props. But I think for all of us, if you've done mostly not being on stage, there's always that little part of you that wants to be on stage.
Because you've seen it.
Right.
Time after time after time.
You want that special moment, and you want that, I can do something good too, so. Yeah.
And the audience is standing at the end of the show and clapping for you, and
Yep.
And when you're in the background and doing things back behind the scenes, you don't get that kind of adulation all the time.
Sometimes you do, so it's nice.
What has been your favorite behind the scenes role?
Oh, my favorite is actually stage manager.
Okay.
I really enjoy it. I enjoy doing it for straight plays because musicals are a lot. And my very second stage manager role was for Julie in the producers, and I did not know what I was doing. It was a lot. It was a lot more than I thought it was. It was a good learning experience, but I prefer stage manager for straight plays. It's a lot more, I feel like you have more connection to the cast because you're not running around so much behind the scenes. Like you're able to work with the cast more when it's a straight play, and it's a totally different experience, I think.
What is the role in your estimation? What's the role of a stage manager?
To make sure that the actors are on stage when they need to be.
Okay.
To make sure that their stuff is where it needs to be, and if they need mics, if they have problems with their mics, we're taking care of that. So you're just making sure that behind the stage everything's good, and the directors can sit and watch what they created happen on stage.
Are you wearing a headset and communicating with anyone when you're a stage manager?
I communicate with sound people, light people, and one of the directors.
Okay. So say you're doing a show at the auditorium and Dan Wilson says, "Uh-oh, one of our mics just died." Is he in your head saying?
He's in my headset saying it, and we're trying to get it taken care of.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
And it's nice that, and you're kind of a living proof of the fact that you can be involved with the Footlighters even if you don't want to be on stage. There are lots of roles for you.
Absolutely. We're always looking for box office volunteers, people to help with front of the house management, which is just making sure people get sat and all of our tickets are counted for and stuff. That's an area where we struggle, and I've tried in the last couple years to reach out. I've gotten help with people from the chamber, people from Horizon Books. So I try to reach out to include the community because I feel like it should be a community thing. I think a lot of people want to be involved, but they just maybe don't know how to do it. So, and I think it's also a gateway to get people on stage once they see how to help with other stuff, then maybe it'll help him to get on stage as well.
Well, and you were there with your daughter.
I was, yeah.
And it obviously, it's something that you kind of stuck in your head that you wanted to be involved anyway.
Yeah, and I don't know if I ever would have if she had not wanted to be a part of it. I don't know if I would have eventually stumbled into it or if I just would have went about a different path. So it's been a fun ride, that's for sure. Even now she's graduated and moved on to college, I was not able to quit the Footliters, so I'm still here.
Still there. All right, Annabelle Tharnish is Emily Webb in this show. And Annabelle, how much experience do you have in live theater?
I have been in 4 shows, 3 musicals, and one of them is a play. And this is my first play.
Musicals are would you say a musical is a bigger challenge than a straight play?
It depends on the production.
Okay.
Because some musicals, there are so many song numbers and dances and so much to learn in addition to lines. But some plays, there's so much talking and so much to be said with your faces and your hands that music would not work in that case. So I guess it just depends on the show.
Tell us about your role as Emily Webb.
Emily thinks she is the smartest person on the planet.
Uh-oh.
She loves herself, but she also loves her family.
Okay.
She is in love with the boy next door, but can't let him know that. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really discovered her too much yet. I'm still working on the character development.
Did any of you see any prior productions of this to help inform your performance, or did you, and this is a question for each one of you, or did you prefer to go in blind?
So I actually had read it because I'm on play selection committee, so I always read the scripts.
It was part of your job to
It
know.
was part of my job description. But I also watched a PBS production that has Paul Newman in it, 2000, I don't know. And it was interesting to watch because one of the key things about our town is a lot of pantomiming and miming is happening on the show. So there's not a huge set with tons of different pieces. There's a table and chairs and everything else. Like Heather and I are both in our kitchens quite often, and we're cooking and preparing food.
So from a set standpoint, this is completely opposite from Noises Off.
This is the kind of show you want to be stage manager for.
So there's not that much to do.
And funnily enough, there is a stage manager character in the show that kind of played by Joe Bauman, beautifully played by Joe Bauman. The stage manager kind of represents God and sort of brings the audience into what's the story, what's happening on stage. And somebody asked, my character dies in this. I don't think that's giving too much away. Somebody asked me, like, how did you die? And I'm like, I don't know. Ask Joe, because Joe narrates everything. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, you died of pneumonia when you went to visit. But I watched that production, and it was, what hit me about that production was how it evoked a certain emotion, this sort of hominess and small town centric. So it was helpful for me to see it, but then also, like, my first day rehearsing, Sally's like, I don't want you to play this character anything like that one. So, then you have to kind of cut it out of your memory and throw it away and do it totally differently, because Sally Geigen is one of the directors for this, and she had very specific temperaments that she had in mind for the two mothers, and it wasn't the same as what we had seen in that show. So you have to be a little flexible. Watching it is always a little tricky because you don't want to just copy what someone else does. You want to find the character for yourself too.
Jacob, how much past experience did you have with our town before?
I didn't know it was actually a play.
Okay.
So, yes, when I read it, I was just like, oh, okay, oh, this happened, oh, okay. Yeah, like getting to, what am I trying to say? Yeah, just like just pretty much understand how it goes, and, so.
Okay. Heather?
So I obviously had heard of it. I'm old enough to have known what it was. And ironically, about 2 months before, I read a book that Sally had been passing around called Tom Lake that references our town pretty heavily. So that was kind of an introduction to it. And I also watched the same production that Julie did. And it's true, the two moms in the show are opposite what we actually play. So they cast them kind of differently. So Julie and I both went into auditions playing our characters the wrong way, and then had to go around and correct that. So that was kind of interesting. What I do feel is interesting too about the play is, in the play, there's supposed to be no emotions. You're supposed to be delivering the lines, hardly showing emotion, just kind of by rote. And Sally and Meg wanted to bring more out of the characters. They want us to show emotion and feelings and get that across, not kind of like how it was originally intended when it was wrote.
Are Sally and Meg co-directors, or is there one chief and one assistant?
They're co-directors, right? Yeah.
Okay, so they have equal authority over all of you.
They have equal authority, and they get along wonderfully. They've been both great with working with on this play.
And we're talking about Sally Goggin and Meg Sanangelo. Yep. Yes. Okay, so Annabelle, you're young, and I'm guessing you didn't have a ton of exposure to our town before you accepted this role.
No, I did not. 2 days before auditions, I decided to look it up on YouTube to get a little inspiration to see what Emily Webb really is about, because I had never heard of this show. So I also watched the Paul Newman version on YouTube and about every other version that is there. I went to auditions trying to play the Emily from Paul Newman, which somehow I still got the role, but Sally does not like that Emily at all. It's the exact opposite of what I'm supposed to do. So I guess all of the characters in the Paul Newman version do everything wrong, apparently.
Differently.
Differently.
Not Sally's vision for all those. So why don't we talk a little bit about, has this ever, Julie, been done in movie form, or has this always been theatrical only? Because I don't recall ever hearing about a movie version of this.
I've seen two old versions, one from the 1980s. I think the Paul Newman one is more recent than that. And I think the Paul Newman one was presented theatrically, but was filmed for a movie.
Okay.
So I'm not sure there was even an audience for that. I don't know, to be honest. But in the 1980 version that I saw, I think it was being performed off Broadway somewhere. I don't know that I've ever seen like a commercial like movie theater movie about it.
Okay.
There've probably been things that are like modeled after it or have similar storylines, but it's very unique because it really does, it hits this young couple when they're young, when they're getting to know each other and falling in love, and then they get married, and then eventually there's a death.
From start to finish, how long is this? How many years?
I think it's 13.
13?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like they're 15 or 16 when it starts, and then 30 something at the end. Okay. Yeah.
You're 26 at the end. You're a teenager at the beginning? Are you both, Jacob? And so you guys are teenagers when this play begins?
Yes.
Okay. When and where? Because we haven't even talked about that. We're 23 minutes into the show, and we haven't even talked about when, where, and how people can get to it. They've got to get to the important stuff.
It's being held in the Cadillac High School auditorium. So
Okay.
this is our first time back in the auditorium since the renovations, which is very exciting.
And I will tell you that I was there for Footloose.
Yes.
And if you have not been there, it is much improved. It is a lot. Did you guys begin rehearsals there, or was that still in progress when you started rehearsals?
Footloose was still going on.
Okay.
We've only been rehearsing at the Footliters building.
Right.
Our new
building.
Mm-hmm. Just because we can't get on the stage that long, they only rent it to us for X number of days. We move in this Sunday.
Okay.
So then we'll be rehearsing there. So that'll be our first time like on the actual stage at the auditorium. But we open on March 8th.
So you're starting Sunday, which means Tech Week is going to be that week.
Yes.
Doesn't sound like Tech Week is necessarily going to be all that crazy for this play.
Tech Week is always crazy.
Well, because you've got microphones and things and all kinds of, I mean, even a play that doesn't have a ton going on stage, there's always stuff percolating in the background, right?
I think one of the biggest tricks they're going to have is the microphones, just because it is quite a large cast, and there are various scenes where people have cameo appearances briefly on stage where they'll need to be mic'd, and then they'll probably have to hand their mic off to somebody else. So that will be probably the biggest thing we're dealing with during Tech Week, besides just transferring to a bigger stage space and, figuring out where everything lines up on stage and how that all fits.
And who is you said that Joe Bauman is your on-stage stage manager. Mm-hmm. Is he actually the stage manager too?
No, Barb Sicoli is.
Okay, but so she's the one who's going to be juggling all the microphones and doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any other cast members you want to mention besides the four of you that are here? And I know that kind of puts you on the spot because you don't want to leave anybody out.
Well, I for sure want to mention our husbands. Yes. So Heather and I actually, it's been a blessing for us in a way, because we know each other decently well enough that the friendship that we're supposed to share together has come fairly naturally. And I think she feels the same, that some of the scenes where we're on stage together are our favorite ones. Yep. But we do have husbands that we each interact with quite a bit.
I tolerate mine. She likes hers.
I like mine, apparently. So John Barry plays my husband. He's been in a few Footliters productions. He was in 39 Steps, I think was probably his biggest role. And Jay Simon plays Heather's husband, Mr. Webb, who's the newspaper editor. And Jay, he's a character actor.
Yeah.
It's funny because, Jay used to be a basketball play-by-play guy who did theater on the side, and now he's kind of a theater guy who does basketball play-by-play on the side.
Yeah.
He's been.
I'm not sure he expected a big role in this, and I don't know that I would say it's a huge role, but it's definitely one of the more noticeable roles, and he has to do something different every show. So he's like, his normally bald head isn't bald for this, and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, well, me, I got to do something different for every show. So I think they add quite a bit to it, just because those relationships are so central to the story that's happening. But there are people, Leslie Benson, she was in Too Much Like Make the Babies Go Blind, and she just has a really good comedic timing sense. And she has a cameo as like the professor that has all the expert information on the town. Just lovely little chunks of moments in the play where somebody comes on stage and shines and adds to the overall effect of the play. There's quite a few extras in the ensemble that have those moments.
I jumped away from the dates.
Yes.
So we need to, because something else popped into my head in its stream of consciousness. That's just kind of how it goes with live radio. But dates, times, show times, how can folks get tickets?
So tickets are already available at our outlets, which is Horizon Books and Brinks Custom Framing, and online at CadillacFootlighters.com. The dates are March 8 and 9 and 15 and 16. The typical times that we have, which are 7 o'clock performances on the Fridays and Saturday nights, and then the second Saturday of the 16th, there's also a matinee.
Just a single matinee on your last day?
Yes.
Okay. So it is extremely important, I think, for people to support live theater in Cadillac. Obviously, it seems to me like the bigger the name play, the more people you attract. So sometimes there's a bit of a risk in presenting something that isn't as well known. So get out there, support live theater.
Definitely. And this is just it. I'm not going to say it's like huge young children friendly, but there's nothing in it that children can't see.
Okay.
It's family friendly in that sense, and it's family values and that sort of thing. It's a little heavy, but not in a bad way. In a very sort of comforting, appealing way.
Okay. Yeah. Get your tickets. Where one more time? Ahead of time.
You can buy the tickets on our website at CadillacFootlighters.com.
FLFOOTLITRS.
Yes, not
Very important.
misspelled, I guess.
Yes.
And Horizon Books has them, and Brink's Custom Framing has them.
And if available, at the door.
And they will be, yes. And they should be available at the door. It's that auditorium has a lot of seats.
It
so
does. It does. But we want to see them all full.
We want to
We
fill
would
it
love
up.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Heather Branham, Annabelle Tharnish, Jacob Johnson, Julie Van Heitzma from the cast of Our Town with the Cadillac Footlighters. Thank you all for coming in today.
Thank you.
Cadillac Unscripted is sponsored by Independent Bank. Join us next week, same time, same station for some more local chat here on 107.9 CDY.